I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent at the beginning of this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean, guaranteed. Just like the two gentlemen I have on this Friday show. That's right. We're going double barrel today. And both of these guys are doctors, PhDs. One guy you've heard on the show several times. You guys love him. You always ask me to bring him back on. He's my paisan. I'm talking about Dr. Ben Bocchicchio. So he's here. But wait, Ben said, hey, Vin, got to bring this other guy in. He's from Canada. I think we're trying to build a wall between the United States and Canada because I keep hearing about border problems. Maybe we could talk about that. But this guy's a Canuck, and I'm glad to meet him. We talked a little bit off the air before we got rolling. I'm talking about Dr. Maritn Gibala. How are you guys doing?
Very well, very well. Good to see you, Vin.
Good, thanks. Great to meet you.
Yeah, now I'm going to give a little background. So, Ben, you wrote to me a while back. You've been on the show several times. People love when you come on. I always make you tell the Arthur Jones story over and over. We're not going to do that today. But I always think that it's worth citing because I live by some of the rules that we learned from Arthur Jones back in the day. And I do believe that strength training is the fountain of youth. And I believe that more and more as I get older. As a matter of fact, I was hiking with a friend of mine who's also a big-time aerobic athlete. And I'm going to want both of you guys to speak. It's kind of why I have you guys on together. I want you guys to speak to this. And the guy's my age, 62 years old. And we always credit ourselves. We have resting heart rates of when we're out of shape in the early 50s, when we're in great shape. Hell, mine, when I was ultra cycling, would go down to resting heart rate of 38. Well, we show off with those numbers. My buddy's always bragging about just, sitting around at 45 beats per minute. But I looked at him and me on the mountain, and, well, I had a bit of an excuse, but it wasn't much of an excuse. I went through chemotherapy again right before I got there. So I said, man, for 62, we're in great shape. But, man, we look like shit. That's all I could think. And my buddy, he's got a streak going with rowing that has no tomorrow. Now, I'm a guy that at one time bench pressed 405. By the way, Martin, I'll tell you this. Never took a drug in my life, not even pot. But I was a clean 405, a natty bencher at 405. Squatted well over 550. Good clean squat down there at 550. Was able to lift everything we had in the gym when it came to deadlifts. So spent a lot of time getting really strong. But at 62, I looked at myself and my buddy and I went, no, it's not going down this way. It's not going to happen this way. Now, that being said, I still would walk into the gym. I have a rack right behind me. That's not for show. Right here in my office. I would do once a week. I would do a once a week bro split. I would do one day of pull, one day of push, one day of legs. Everything else was this year alone, I'm going to be at 420 hours of aerobics. I write it all down. Heavy on the aerobics, not very heavy on the weights. And I was watching my body become diminished, and cancer didn't help. It was my second time around with leukemia. But right there in Mammoth Lakes, California, before I left that trip, I found a guy that had a box style gym. He teaches, exactly what we're going to talk about with you, with your 1 minute workout today. And I called that guy on the phone and said, your gym is closed. He says, yeah, I only open it to give classes. I explained who I was. He actually Googled me and went, oh my God, I've heard of you back when you were in Southern California training all these celebrities. Come on in. Here's a key to my place. I couldn't wait to leave Mammoth to start working out more. And I haven't stopped since. It's become my new thing. It's my New Year's resolution for next year, but I've already started. At my age, I'm not letting sarcopenia take over. I'm going to open up the floor to you first, Maritn, since we've heard Ben gab on this show a gazillion times. Am I right to do what I'm doing?
You got to do both, obviously, would be my contention, right?
Yeah.
So, but, sounds like what you're talking about. Probably the biggest thing, too, is do what you like and enjoy, because you're more likely to stick with it over the long term. And so, our big approach has been, I'm more interested in the cardiovascular health side of things, cardiorespiratory fitness. Interval training is a time-efficient way to do that. I think we're going to get into that a little bit, but of course, the resistance exercise is absolutely critical, and arguably more critical as you age, right? What's going to keep you out of the assisted living home? It's your ability to ascend from a chair, right? Keep yourself independent and be able to use the toilet on your own. So great to join you guys. Sounds like you already know what you like and enjoy, and it's obviously working for you, but happy to get into this.
That's something I always say, Maritn. People always, I've been in this business for 40 years training people. What's the best exercise? You go to a party, and I always say it's the exercise. It sounds glib when you say it, but I say it's the exercise you're willing to do. Right? Some people are only willing to swim. And I always go, you know what? That's great cardiovascular. You're working almost every muscle in your body, but it's not a weight-bearing exercise. You're leaching from your bones, right? So we always see that 85-year-old woman that swam a mile a day her whole life, but she fell, broke her hip because there wasn't much hip bone left, right? What say you to someone like that? Should they be in the gym early and often?
Well, they need to be lifting, right? And so whether that's body weight style lifting, I don't know that you have to be in the gym. A lot of are intimidated by that, at least starting out, but you absolutely have to be doing some sort of resistance training. Again, getting back to our theme here, you absolutely have to do both. I'm curious, though, because I've had that question a lot too. If you had to pick one exercise, what would it be? And my go-to would be the burpee, just because it involves aerobic resistance if you keep the recovery period short, but of course, the best one is what you will do and you can do.
Ben, what would be, if you had to pick one exercise, Ben, what would you pick? Just one. You can't say two. I know I see your Italian brain working over there. There's about three, but give me one exercise, because I have my one. It's written in my book.
I don't know. I would do a whole body circuit of resistance training.
No. You got to pick one exercise. You see, I knew Ben was going to do this. Just like for the next 6 months, doctor says you have this disease, but we will allow you to do one exercise every day. It could be a push-up, a squat, whatever you want. One exercise. Maritn said the burpee. Mine is written in my book. Well, you got to pick one exercise. What is it?
First of all, I get another doctor.
You see, I tell you, the son of a bitch from the East Coast is not going to give you the answer you want, Maritn. That's the way he works.
No, I think, something that works upper and lower body. I mean, obviously that you can do to develop some kind of strength and also some kind of endurance. So, what is a jumping jack? Who the hell knows what we did in the old days of Vinnie? But, I'm not, I can't give you one. I mean, honestly, that makes me uncomfortable to give that answer because it's bullshit.
But you got to give just one. You see,
what is this? Like, is this a quiz show or something?
Maritn, didn't I tell you up front? I preloaded this going. He can't give me one.
Yeah, and I regret for sending us down this path already. So we can just ignore that question and get back to the interview.
So my one is the jump rope, and people go, "Why the jump rope?"
Jump rope.
Yeah, jump rope is my one because
I like
you're getting some aerobic training. You're bounding, which is going to help build your bone.
About a weighted jump rope, right? How about that?
Okay, I'll take that. That's one exercise, a weighted jump rope, because it's a weight-bearing exercise and it's also aerobic, and you're jiggling your body.
A weighted jump rope and the phone number to the orthopedic surgeon. Okay, if you're going to be older. Okay.
Yeah. So there, we finally got Ben. For once, I got him to come around on one exercise. And let me ask you, since I got you, you were around at the beginning with Arthur Jones and that whole thing, and And you and I are on the same page with that. I have a friend in New York that does, he'll get just like you, who'll get you out, in and out in 20 minutes and your legs will be quivering and you're going to want to throw up. He does, 1 set to failure.
Yeah.
And Frederick Hahn, you may have heard of him.
Freddie's one of my proteges.
Yeah. So, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Guy's an incredible trainer. Twice a week, once a week. How many times do you have to do it?
Well, I mean, we have Marty on here, so I'd like to go into some easy to digest physiology. Okay, I didn't make this system up because I just felt like creating something. I mean, I went by the tenets of exercise physiology and some applied anatomy. In other words, this stuff has a good basis, and in fact, Vinny, it works with most of the people most of the time, and it's behaviorally. It's palatable, and people can do this on a long-term basis. That to me is important. Okay,
yeah.
If something that works both aerobically and anaerobically. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of, even in the science world, there's a whole bunch of discussion about what's what and all that. But I mean, if you're practical about it, we can get this cardiovascular response, and I'm talking now about health response. I'm not talking about performance. The reason I have this thing with zone 2 people, okay, is that I think they are conflating performance training with health training. And to me, there's a difference, okay? I mean, if you're going to run a long distance or cycle for a long distance, you have to practice running or cycling for long distances. It's the specificity. If you're going to do a bench press, Vinny, it's great. You can do push-ups, you can do flies, but you got to do bench presses to be able to specifically adapt your talents to that move. So I think what happens is when I say bias, somebody has a bias, it doesn't mean they're necessarily bad. It means that you have seen over your period of experience good stuff happening. So you're pretty much, akin to it. You're pretty much religiously devoted to it. And I think that's not that scientific, even in my own experience. I've got successful methods, okay? But it doesn't mean that I could preclude that other methods obviously can get good benefits. So I'm a minimalist. What's the minimum amount of work I can do and time exposure and commitment I can do to get maximum aerobic and anaerobic benefits, strength and cardiovascular benefits? That's where I'm at for myself and for my people.
And what is that answer for you, Ben?
That answer for me is high intensity interval training using resistance. Okay, in other words, how can I get the local effect of strength training and the global effect of what we call cardiovascular training in one shot? And I think I've accomplished that pretty well by being able to increase VO2 max and strength in all the major muscle groups in the body. To me, this is the basis for all good exercise.
I'm glad you brought up VO2 max because the three of us, with our backgrounds, we've been following VO2 max and conditioning that way for 40 years, for me at least. But it seems like the internet learned that word that term 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Everybody's, VO2, good high VO2 max, and you're going to have more longevity. Martin, yay, nay, where are you on VO2 max and longevity? And then we'll go backwards from there.
Yeah, yay for sure. I think it's hard to argue with the epidemiological data that the higher the cardiorespiratory fitness, which is just the clinical correlate of VO2 max, is strongly associated with mortality, but probably more important with this whole notion of health span, right? And your risk of developing many different chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, certain types of cancer. So a major thrust of our research has been, like Dr. Ben, time efficient strategies to boost cardiorespiratory fitness, given the robust relationship with lifespan, but more importantly, health span. And our other interest obviously is metabolic fitness, which is largely the capacity of your muscles to burn sugars and fats, things like mitochondrial biogenesis, and then you need the strength training, of course, as well. But I'm a massive proponent of strategies to develop or maintain cardiorespiratory fitness, VO2 max.
Now, my job here is to get you to dumb that down. Pretend that I want you to go back, Marty. I know exactly what you were talking about. Ben does. but I want you to talk to me and tell me that again as if I'm in third grade. Now, here's the deal. We know what it means, right? First, we need to explain what VO2 max is. Maximum amount of oxygen uptake during exercise, right? So explain that, and then we're going to explain how to raise it, because I know Ben is looking at that camera going, you ain't going to do it with zone 2. And he would be correct. Well, you could get a little bit of it done,
Yes.
but you're going to ever get it to where you really wanted to, right? Unless you do some interval. So Marty, go back and explain it again, this time pretend I'm in third grade.
Yeah, no, for sure. So VO2 max, as you said, is the maximum rate that your body can take up and utilize oxygen. It's usually measured in liters of oxygen per minute. It's the classic exercise stress test where you see someone on a bike, they got the mask over their face and they're working at progressively higher workloads. You know, they keep dialing the number up on the bike or the treadmill until you can't go anymore. And the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can take in is that value. It reflects the integrated or the combined capacity of lots of body systems, but mainly your lungs, your heart, your blood and your blood vessels, and the ability of your tissues, mainly muscle, to take up and use that oxygen. Probably the primary thing that determines VO2 max is the pumping capacity of your heart, literally how much blood can be ejected from the heart every minute. And so that's going to be a combination of how many times you beat your heart and how much blood with every beat comes out. So those are the physiology, or that's the primary determinants of VO2 max. And the science would tell us, when I say epidemiologically, these are very large scale studies that follow large groups of people over long periods of time and look at associations. So these aren't cause and effect, but we know from those studies, you know, if you follow 100,000 people over a decade and we look at what best predicts who is going to die, who's going to develop cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes, the people who have the higher VO2 max values on average tend to be the lowest at risk for dying as well as developing those diseases. And so there's a very strong base there, association between fitness, cardiorespiratory fitness, and health and disease risk. Now, that's not necessarily a direct cause and effect, but there's strong biology to support that.
I'm glad you said that, Martin, because I always have a problem with epidemiology. We saw what that did during the pandemic. Exactly BS, right? We were killing people on ventilators and everything else. I hate epidemiology for that simple reason. I want you to take me to the lab, because I can sit here and argue, okay, I like what you're saying because I'm a guy that believes in a high VO2 max. I have one. I'm guessing Ben has one and you have one, because I'm looking at all three of us. We all look like we're in shape. But I can also go, okay, we're looking at 100,000 people. And when you look at epidemiology, obviously the people with high VO2 maxes are the ones that probably didn't smoke, drank very conservatively or drank at all, got 8 hours of sleep, exercised their entire life. Therefore, their all-cause mortality is going to be edging up towards 90 versus 78, right? So I want to go to the lab because we can actually measure it in a lab, right? And I'm with you. I believe a high VO2 max carried through life is going to get you somewhere quicker than, or get you there for a longer period than anything else. So let's go to the lab. Now, you mentioned, you know, when we talk about how much your blood, you know, how much your heart can pump in blood. But then you have the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if you don't have the mitochondria and you can't get that Krebs cycle to work efficiently, and you don't have the capillaries working for you. Now, all of that comes together, right? When you start building the heart, you start building everything else. Can we agree that having a good, strong zone 2 base, a good platform, is going to be a good place to start? Ben, you're shaking your head saying, no way. Go ahead and explain, Ben, if you want to.
Here's my point. We hear this, you know, the wider the base, the higher the apex, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm a wise guy, Italian guy. By the way, Vinny, third grade, you mentioned that. That was the best 4 years of my life. I just want you to know that. So, no, but I'm looking at it this way. The higher the apex, the wider the base. Okay, I don't see why this correlation would be somehow deniable. But by that I mean I'm a big muscle fiber type recruitment pattern guy. I think all of our physiological benefits can be delineated and defined by how we recruit muscle fibers. In other words, for what duration, at what frequency, and what intensity, and the recovery thereof. Okay, so all of this comes down to that, I think. And I don't know that there's much pushback on that. So my point is, for example, I don't think, and I think Marty's book will correlate this, I don't think you need this base. I think that's where I think performance and health become dichotomous. They go in different ways, Vinny, okay? I don't think you need to have this, 4, 5, 6 hour. I heard somebody ask Indigo San Milan, who's very, very good. This guy knows his stuff, a nice man, trains world-class cyclists, is a cyclist himself. And they said, Doctor, do you think, for optimal longevity and health, that 5 hours of zone 2 a week is enough? And he said, no. Okay. Now I'm thinking about the people that I deal with, like those common people on the planet, regular people. Okay. Who in the hell is going to say, like, I have to do more than 5 hours a week of whatever this is and put this into my palatable lifestyle schedule? I think that's impractical, Vinny. I think for a distance runner or cyclist, yes, you have to expose yourself to the specific muscle fiber recruitment pattern. In other words, do the thing you have to do. And I can understand that. But I don't think you need any kind of a God-blessed base that interval training could provide you in order to increase your VO2 max. And there are plenty of studies to show that. Now, when you say correlation, Vinny, we can tease out in good studies, you can tease out the smoking and the drinking and the psychotic episodes, and so that you can kind of hone in on this.
But you can't with epidemiology. It was the problem, because these are people just walking the earth, right? So
you can have epidemiology that teases out some of these, college education. People with a higher college education have fewer cancers. But that, of course, we know that stepping into a college doesn't make you more cancer resistant. But these people are more educated. They listen to their doctor.
More money, better doctors, and on and on.
Yeah.
But then wait. I want to go back, because we're doing what Italians do. We crossed over. So in the real world, if I'm taking someone off the couch, trying to get them into working out, like they're not in shape whatsoever. If I start blasting those people with interval training, I'm going to end up with pulled muscles.
No, Vinny.
I'm talking about a base for a period of time. You don't see.
I know what you believe, and I know what's worked well for you. I'm saying I can get the most sedentary 400-pound guy who's highly diabetic, and I can have him do high-intensity training. And people say, that's insane. But for that 400-pound guy, if I put him against the wall and he bends 10 degrees for a wall seat, in 20 seconds, he has recruited his type 2B muscle fibers. The high intensity has to do with the recruitment of type 2B glycolytic muscle fibers. It doesn't have to be with beating the shit out of somebody, using heavy weights, exhausting them, knocking them on the floor, and proving you're a great man. So I can take rehab patients and have them do high intensity, in other words, recruit their type 2 muscle fibers with a very modest 1-pound dumbbell, if it has to be, as opposed to an athlete who needs a 100-pound dumbbell. It's all relative to which muscle fibers they have to recruit. It's very safe.
So we're working on their fast twitch muscles just by getting them to do 20 seconds of a quarter.
Well, it may be that's all it takes, because he is so deficient in muscle performance.
Right. Yes. No, I get it. And I would say take that 400-pound person and try to get him to walk a half a block. Right.
For him, a half a block, Vinny, he'll get tired in a half a block, and he probably will have to recruit his type 2B fibers. That's why he has to stop.
Okay.
I totally agree with that. We may be saying the same thing, but I don't want to get in the idea that you need to create this long endurance base, because that's ominous. That's obligatory to people behaviorally. I'm saying you could give me 10, 12 minutes and I can work some major muscle groups in your body to a point of your momentary failure, very safely, very slowly, very little force involved, and get your whole body working globally and locally to provide the physiological benefits of that movement.
Fair enough. Marty, what are your thoughts? You see where I am on this, and you see where Ben is. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so lots there. And we're using these binary terms, HIIT, and I'm sure maybe even the three of us would have a different definition of what HIIT is. And to me, it's just intermittent exercise. It doesn't have to be all out as hard as you can go training. It doesn't have to be to failure. In brief about the whole zone 2 versus intervals, I clearly high level endurance athletes who are exercising 25, 30 hours a week, they center around an 80-20 split in terms of 80% low intensity, 20% high intensity intervals. And that's, I think there's little doubt that that's the best prescription to optimize performance. I agree with Dr. Ben in that it doesn't translate then that you just scale that down automatically to someone who might be doing an hour a week of physical activity. And I would push back against the notion that zone 2 is quote unquote optimal for mitochondrial health and mitochondrial capacity. There's zero scientific evidence for that statement. I've just collaborated on a review article for this. And so that I would just push back against this idea or this common narrative that zone 2 is essential or optimal for mitochondrial biogenesis. So that's probably my biggest beef, if you will, with it, that, scaling high level endurance athletes down and that's the optimal prescription for everyone. The other would be agreeing with the point that Dr. Ben just made, and that's the barrier to entry is very high. If you're telling people you have to start out with 4 to 5 hours a week of zone 2, where people might be coming from nothing. And if we're just trying to get them off the couch, trying to get them moving, I do think they can use an interval-based approach, but it can be gentle interval training or moderate interval training. It doesn't mean sprinting to save your child from an oncoming car. So I think there's more agreement amongst the three of us. And a lot of this comes down to, how you're defining specific terms, but probably most importantly, and it's something we said offline at the outset, we set up these camps, zone 2 versus HIIT, cardio versus resistance. And of course, the answer is somewhere in the middle, and everyone should be doing a little bit of both. Right. So that's my quick take.
So Vinnie, we understand, you know what's going on. I mean, you have a different approach, but I think I don't want to be misleading by saying that I think you need to create this base. If I am going to train an athlete for performance, I agree that you have to do whatever it is, even if I think that may be deleterious. In other words, if you're going to run a marathon, I think you have to be able to perform in a compromised state for a long period of time. I don't think that compromised state of what I would consider too much exercise or muscle stimulus applies to health benefits. And I agree with Marty that the mitochondrial response is all or one. In fact, the mitochondrial, let me get into this a little bit. The way mitochondrial form in a cell, okay, they call it the morphology, how they congregate, how they aggregate, is different in type 1 muscle fibers as in type 2B muscle fibers.
No, wait, whoa, Ben, go ahead. I like what you're saying here.
Yeah.
Go ahead and explain it. I'm in 3rd grade again.
All right. This is the 2nd year.
You see, we can sit here and all masturbate on the mics and talk about B1 and B2 muscle fiber and fast twitch and slow twitch. Give it to the audience the way they're going to understand it.
Mitochondria are little things, little organisms, little critters in each cell that actually basically regulate energy and allow, the more of them you have, simply the more energy you can produce and the higher rate of energy you can produce it at more miles per hour, let's say, okay? But you can develop these. When Marty says biogenesis or mitogenesis, that just means generating, making new mitochondria, okay? You can make new and more mitochondria by doing high intensity, what we call high intensity or stress training or resistance or strength training, just as well as you can by doing endurance training. But what's interesting is that the way these mitochondria aggregate, they move to their benefit, to where they can be most readily applied, most efficiently. And we know from the science that mitochondria in the easy muscles, the endurance muscle fibers, and the mitochondria in the strength muscle fibers actually look different, and they aggregate, they get together, they make smaller communities. Some are more stretched out, some are intertwined, they connect. And with the fast twitch, the strength muscle fibers, the mitochondria do not. At the end of each muscle fiber, they disconnect. So, but there's still, no one has been able to identify to me yet why one form of mitochondrial formation, or whatever neighborhood they want to go to, is better and better for health than the other. Does that make any sense, Marty?
Yeah. I mean, there's clearly some differences in certainly the amount between the fibers. But I guess back to the big picture point is these mitochondria are really important. The question then becomes how we grow or induce or create more of those, because that's clearly important for overall health and well-being, and particularly related to things like your risk of type 2 diabetes. So that's why you want more mitochondria. If you're an athlete, you want more because it allows you, as Dr. Ben said, to maintain a very high pace during a race. But although this idea of maintaining a high pace, that is relevant to everyone, because all that is, as you well know, is just functional capacity in everyday life, right? Can you continue doing the activities that you want to do, whether it's playing with your grandkids, getting your groceries, whatever, without causing a lot of fatigue and tiredness and soreness? And so more mitochondria are important for that. It's not my analogy, but we talk about the ceiling. The ceiling is VO2 max, right? What's your maximum rate for oxygen? And then the other idea is how close to the ceiling can you work? And so ideally you want those to be both as high as possible, a high ceiling, and you can work close to your ceiling for a long period of time. But it's the mitochondria mainly that are determining that second one, how close to the ceiling you can work for a prolonged period of time, the functional threshold, as athletes will talk about.
So I want to use the second part of the show. We're going to take a quick break. I have to do an ad, but I want you guys to both think about this when we go into this break. I want to talk about how to, number one, get the VO2 max as high as you can possibly get it. The best way, we watch all these videos of these people doing these acid baths online now. They're doing it with rowing machines and assault bikes and everything else. So I want to know how we're going to get our VO2 max as high as we can. I want to know how we can, that's going to talk about, it's going to get into building the Krebs cycle to be stronger. But I also want to talk about how we get the capillaries and the mitochondria to be as plentiful as we can. But before we do that, this is one thing that not any Italian can do without, and that's olive oil. Now, here's the deal, folks. In the United States, you could cut olive oil up to 40% and still call it 100% pure olive oil. I think that's atrocious. What's the other? So you have 60% olive oil, the 40% is seed oils. Seed oils are not good for you. Bottom line. You want 100% pure olive oil? Well, there's a bunch of companies out there making it. But the one that advertises on this show and has done for well over 10 years is Villa Capelli. Villa Capelli comes right out of Puglia, Italy. They will not crush an olive before it's time. That's right. Every time you get Villa Capelli, it's perfect. They don't buy from Spain and Greece and everywhere else. When they run out, they run out. So that's why I get 6 liters at a time. I get 2 3-liter 10s. I always have that coming in. Believe it or not, even though they're a sponsor, I have to buy it like everyone else. Olive oil is liquid gold. It ain't cheap, but Villa Capelli sells it at the best price. You're going to get the best olive oil at the best price. You want to save an extra 10%? Put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. Promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. No wimpy Y. Get your Villa Capelli. Let them know we sent you. If you spend over $125 after the Vinnie discount, you also get free shipping. Villa Capelli olive oil. It's all we use in this house. It's all you should use in your house. We're talking to an old favorite, Dr. Ben Bocchicchio, and a new favorite, Maritn Gibala. Martin, let's start with you since you're the new guest here. I want to get my VO2 max up. Now, look, we could do it in specific sports. I could get over there on my spinner, and I'll end up with more capillaries in my quads and my hamstrings and my ass. And that's going to be it, right? I think Ben even talked about, they collect and they're going to collect wherever you work. We have these assault bikes out there. We now have, rowing. Everyone has a rowing machine. I have one right next to me here in my gym. How do we do this effectively, and how do we build up VO2 max overall?
Yeah. So to optimize it, you want to do a high volume of training, and you want to maintain as high as an intensity as you can for a long time. To answer the question, repeated bouts lasting 3 to 5 minutes in duration at the highest sustainable workload with a couple minutes recovery, repeated many, many times. I think the data would be clear that would be the way to optimize an increase in mitochondria. So yeah, you have to do a lot of that. But maintaining a very high intensity requires you to work in an interval fashion.
Ben?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Well, again, not to get too deep in the weeds, but the way you measure VO2 max, the methodology used will be very critical in the outcome. If I measure marathon runners on a bicycle, their VO2 max won't approach that which I measure on a treadmill. And I also think that, again, I had this local and global kind of concept with exercise. There are local benefits, even including obviously mitochondria, and global effects responding to the local impetus. In other words, when I work my biceps, that's local. That's right on my bicep, on my arm. But as I work them to more and more of a higher degree of demand, okay, the support system, the respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, obviously the skeletal system, all have to support that which is instigated by that muscle group, okay? I think you can improve overall practical VO2 max with I disagree with Marty, at least in my experience, not in my knowledge by any.
Don't feel bad, Marty. He disagrees with me all the time.
No, but I mean, I don't think it requires. I'll give you a perfect example. You'll love this, Vinny. Back in New York, when I trained policemen and firemen, they had to take basically a VO2 max. They had to take a stress test every year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and these guys are going to do zone 2 my ass. These guys smoked and drank and every other damn thing. So how are we going to get them to pass this treadmill test? Okay, I had them train twice a week, whole body, high intensity for them, whatever it was, and I had them start to walk on a treadmill up some inclines so that we get physically, kinesthetically used to what that feels like, because that's part of the test. They all passed it in flying colors. The guys who ran like 5 miles a day had a lot of trouble. Okay, so it showed me firsthand knowledge. I could improve this test because what it really tests, the VO2 max test really tests the ability of the muscles being taxed in that test to utilize oxygen. It doesn't. I don't know that the Marty, you would know this better than anybody. What was the test in Canada? One of the guys did where he tested one leg, and they trained one leg for 6-8 weeks, and then they tested the VO2 max. Then the other leg didn't do anything for the 6 weeks. When they tested the leg that didn't do anything for 6 weeks, the VO2 max went 0. And when they tested the trained leg, the trained leg increased 33% in VO2 max. I mean, so we know this is a muscular response more than just simply, for sure, a cardiovascular response. So that's why I lean heavily towards a muscle-centric kind of philosophy of how to improve this thing.
Now we're setting up a debate with Dr. Ben and I, but I guess I think the data is pretty clear that it's largely cardiovascular that sets people apart in terms of the VO2 max. I agree entirely that mitochondria are important, and definitely you can have specific tests where mitochondria are more important than that. But I think the general consensus view would be that VO2 max is mainly limited by the cardiovascular system, and specifically the ability of the heart to pump blood.
And then a little bit we can get into the ability to work and to utilize lactate. Is that not something important, Marty?
Well, no, lactate is a function of it. But let's go back. Martin, you just said something that you and I agree on. The chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And if you don't have, some sort of base, I'm going to go back to my base. I love my base. That it's hard to get there. Why go from A to Z all in one thing. Why not build up the base? And I agree with you, Marty, with Ben. You don't have to have a gazillion hours of base, but you need a base, or it's at least good to have a base before you start going into the high interval training. And I guess maybe we can settle it this way, and I want to hear from both of you. How many times a week do you think you can safely do a proper, the operative word here is proper HIIT routine? Let's start with you, Ben, and then we'll go to Maritn.
I don't think there's any more benefit to more than 2 sessions a week if we're talking about what I'm talking about as far as high intensity interval training. Okay, there's plenty of evidence to show, like C oxidase, some of these enzymes that have to be recovered, that twice a week is at least as beneficial as 3 times a week. And that's low, and I understand that it's low. But I think once we get into the mechanics and we get into the physiology and the repair and the recovery, I think that holds true, at least in my experience and in my study.
Maritn?
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't want to be this cautious scientist that's hedging on everything, but I think these are important. So I would ask you, Vinny, I guess, number one, what is your definition of a proper HIIT workout? And secondly, to what end? What's the primary goal?
Let's make it an all body workout. Let's say let's put someone on the assault bike. So you're working both, your upper and lower extremities at the same time. And let's say you're doing where you're on for, let's do 2 and 2, on for 2 minutes, off for 2 minutes, max out, warm up, then on for 2, off for 2. Let's say you're doing 6 rounds of that, right? So we're just making up a workout.
Yes.
That's working your entire body. What would you say is the number of times you could do it? Number one, to keep increasing. I don't want to know what you could get away with. We want to keep increasing here, right? So what would keep you increasing, Marty?
Yeah, so I think for most mere mortals, 2 of those a week would be sufficient, because otherwise many people are going to start to break down, right? This type of training is extremely demanding mentally as well as physically. Now, there would be some, of course, like we could take 100 people, you put them on a program, some thrive, some wither, most do okay right in the middle. But some folks could thrive with a 3 times a week approach to that, plus doing heavy endurance, traditional cardio in between. But I would agree that twice a week of that type of training will go a long way to optimizing gains in a large number of people.
I want the audience to hear what these 2 gentlemen said. They're both PhDs. They both know what they're talking about. Something that when I was in California, people would say to me, I go to a HIIT class every morning. And I would say to them, in that case, you're not doing HIIT. And they would say, no. It's a HIIT class. And it's like, there is no way, Lance Armstrong, when he was taking every performance enhancing drug known to mankind, could not do a HIIT workout every single day.
Right.
It's impossible, because you might be doing HIIT on Monday, but by Wednesday, you're not doing anything. Your body cannot recuperate. Listen to what these 2 gentlemen just said. If you get nothing else out of this show today, you just learned something. Ben said that you could probably I think you both said you can eke out a 3rd one. I would agree with that, but I would also agree with Ben that usually after twice a week, you're fooling yourself trying to get that 3rd one in, unless you're some kind of special gifted athlete.
Right.
What say you guys?
So,
go ahead, Marty. Go.
So that's very demanding HIIT workouts. I agree with what you just said. I do think there's a lot of room for things that count as a HIIT workout, and not all of them have to be all out. And this is where I think people get afraid of HIIT, or they think this is not for me at all, because that sounds super intimidating. And we know that HIIT has been safely and effectively applied to individuals with cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, but it's not necessarily that type of HIIT training. So I think there is an important nuance or distinction there, that HIIT can be a broader, more encompassing term And it doesn't always mean that all out demanding or getting to that all out pace, like we were just defining it as right there. So I do think that's an important point to
yeah. I mean, I think that, Vinny, that's why I said, I always say HIIT does not mean hard, demanding, exhausting, climb Mount Everest. HIIT has to do with the muscle fibers that are recruited and utilized to whatever their capacity might be. That's what HIIT is. That's high intensity. That's anaerobic. That's glycolytic, as high as we can get. And there are enormous aerobic benefits. Do you know the most aerobic that we can be physiologically is when we're recovering from anaerobic work? That's when we force this Krebs cycle. We force the mitochondria now to develop the capacity to work under an overload. Okay, that's when we're going to reach 0.7. We're going to reach pure fat burning during recovery from anaerobic work. I think that's scientifically sound. Okay, so my point is, and it's not, Marty, and you know this, but I mean, that's why I think the semantics is so important. It doesn't mean you're going to be like crushing the world with this workout. It means you're going to be working a little bit harder than you're used to. And if you're used to doing nothing, any goddamn thing is harder than that. So it can be as mild as walking 400 yards. And maybe after 200, you have to stop because your type 2 fibers can't produce the energy that we're requiring at the rate we're requiring it. And that's why I think that high intensity has always been a misnomer, because the people that preach high intensity are guys that are sweating and falling and the dumbbells fall on the ground, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the muscle fibers that you have presently in your present condition, whatever it might be, working harder than they used to and recruiting muscle fibers that they're not used to doing in a sedentary lifestyle.
You go back to, and you guys well know this, the coaches say, keep your hard days hard and your easy days easy, right? And not too much in that mushy middle. And I think many people can apply and adopt that. So, if it's 2 days a week, relatively hard for you, as Dr. Ben just said, the other days can be easier, which allows you to push hard on those hard days.
Well, to that end, when all the years I did ultra cycling, these, on the bike for 2 and 3 days in a row with no sleep and all the yada yada crap, I would always try to caution people not to do junk, what we call junk miles, right? A lot of these people get into the more is better attitude, and I would try to explain to them, you have to rest. In all the years that I was lifting heavily, every workout was, we got in there and we did it because you were well rested, right? You know what you have, you go in, you do what you have to do, you get out of the gym, you rest. We lived like lions when I played football. We were either sleeping, eating, or going 1,000%, right? And all three were important to be strong and to be healthy. Yet when I got into ultra sports, people got into these, just the miles and the time and
numbers.
And when they would see that, I would take every Monday off and every Friday completely off. And my 3 aerobic workouts during the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, maybe an hour and a half on Tuesday, maybe 2 hours on Wednesday, maybe an hour on Thursday. They were like, well, wait, when do you get all those miles in? On Saturday, right? You can't keep, just doing it over and over and expect your body to build. Your body needs as much rest as it needs work, whether you're doing anaerobics or aerobics or anything else. And that's why I'm glad you guys said exactly the way I feel, 2 times a week, 3 at the most, on these hard workouts, these hard efforts. Now, Marty, I want to get into your book. I want to give it, I haven't read it yet. I will read it cover to cover. Let me ask this question. Is it on Audible? Can I get an Audible? I will get it tonight. I have so many Audible credits that I will never run out of Audible credits. So I will start listening to your book tomorrow.
It's great. It's as good as anything in the field, honest to God.
I'm sorry I couldn't get to it before this. My good friend Oscar Chalupsky, world-class athlete, is coming back on the show. I had to get his book done before yours. I knew you guys were coming on. Your book is going to be read next, and it will be in the Vinnie Book Club once I read it. I never put anything in there until I read it. Give me an overview of the book. What will we learn? What is the 1 minute workout?
Yeah. So the book, the title of the book comes from work that we've done on our lab, looking at as little as 3 20-second bursts of hard exercise and showing how that can be beneficial for cardiovascular metabolic health. The book basically tries to boil down the science of interval training and put it in accessible and hopefully compelling language for the everyday person. We cover some exercise physiology. We talk about the application of HIIT in less healthy individuals, just reviewing the evidence that people with cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes can do these protocols. I talked to some behavioral experts about the psychology around interval training. And of course, there's a suite of different workouts giving people options. And all of the workouts in the book are based on scientific studies where a key outcome was cardiorespiratory fitness. So people can know any of these workouts, they've been scientifically demonstrated to boost fitness. We talk a little bit about nutrition and we talk about the future of exercise. The book came out in 2017, but I like to think it's stood the test of time and it's held up. Yeah. And last point, we talk about the history of interval training because lots of things we're talking about here, you well know, it's not new, right? Athletes been doing this since the turn of the previous century. And we just rediscover the things every decade or so, but it's really just variations on a theme and going back to fundamentals.
Yeah, what's old is new again. I mean, well, I was coming around in the 70s and fartlek running, which is interval training, was the big thing. You know, just at any given point, you start sprinting and, you know, as if you just stole something in the middle of your run. You know?
I have a colleague who says P90X is just 5BX without the marketing, right? You know, but go back to the 1960s and 5BX. It was a great program that still holds up today.
Yep.
Yeah, it all just keeps coming around. And as I always say, people ask me, what's the best exercise? Is the one you will do. And so getting into the book just a little more, which exercises do you recommend? Any particular exercises? You know, is it all treadmill? Is it all bike? Is it on rowing machines, assault cycles? What are we doing here?
No. So much of our research has used a stationary exercise bike. That's because, you know, we can easily measure power. We can have people work very hard and they're not falling off a treadmill and things like that. But there's the old saying, you know, the heart doesn't know what your muscles are doing. And so I don't think for cardiovascular conditioning, it matters. So hopefully, again, an empowering message for people. You can swim, you can run, you can use an elliptical, you can use body weight style exercise, whatever you like and enjoy. Know that you get the cardiovascular conditioning. Back to Dr. Ben's point, for some of the more muscle specific, there it's going to matter, right? If you're running or cycling or whatever you're doing. But it really doesn't matter what type of exercise you use to implement the fundamental principles in the book that will lead to improvements in health.
Ben, as you know, I'm a big fan of what you do and what Fred Hahn does. You know, you guys do that, you know, in and out, 25 minutes, kicking people's ass. I'm a big fan of it. I always tell people it's tough to do on your own. It's almost impossible. You need someone standing over you, coaching you. For anyone who is new, because I've been on several shows and more audience comes in here all the time, explain what you do with your 2 workouts a week where it's all full body workouts. Go on and give me a little sales pitch. Get people interested in what you're doing.
Well, I think that it's important that we work all the major muscle groups in the body. Okay, I think there are benefits locally, meaning with each muscle group, and also globally. And if we're doing interval training and you're going to do intervals on a bike or intervals on a treadmill or intervals on a rowing machine, and they're supposed to be high intensity, even for those 20 seconds or 60 seconds, I question whether what is demanding and difficult on the 5th or 6th or 7th round of this stuff is really high intensity. However, if I use a different muscle group for each one of my intervals, quads, hamstrings, lats, shoulders, okay, then every muscle group that I work is working while it's fresh and capable, and it's still demanding of the support systems a high level of corresponding support. I think that's the most beneficial high-intensity interval training that can be done. Local, global, mitochondrial, capillary to fiber ratio. I think that's the way to go, and I've been very successful with it. And I may be stubborn, and I'm willing to learn. I mean, I love what Marty does and the stuff that he does. I mean, this guy's carrying the torch. That, you know, I started, you know, 50 some odd years ago now. But I think it's important for people to work all the major muscle groups functionally and also physiologically. I believe in that very much.
Marty, we'll give you the final word here. We know that, you know, you want people to do interval training. Where are you on strength training? Where are you? I know you like the base training. You said that. If someone was just getting off the couch, and we're not going to make it a 400-pound person, we're going to just say it's someone who's sedentary. So many people work from home now. People sit around with these damn things in their hand, doing whatever, and they just get lazy and they're not doing anything. I see kids today and they have, I can't believe, you know, I live near a major college and these kids won't even walk down the street. They're on these scooters, they're doing whatever.
Yeah.
They're not using their bodies the way they were meant to be used. I'm worried for the future. Give me the final word. What would you tell anyone to do?
Every little bit counts. Start with some exercise snacks, which are just less than 1 minute of vigorous exercise. If you do 3 or 4 of those a day, you're going to see meaningful health benefits. So whether that's taking the stairs, whether that's carrying a heavy backpack while you're running for the subway or the bus, compelling evidence now that even 3 to 4 minutes daily of that type of exercise is going to lower your risk of dying from all causes, and then build from there. And so to do exercise snacks, it's intermittent in nature, but start slow, build from there, because we know just get out of that lowest fitness level. You know, to the bang for your buck that Dr. Ben was talking about, you don't need to be an elite athlete. You just don't want to be in that lowest range because that's the most risky range. Just get out from there and then build from there. And it doesn't matter what you do. Pick something you like and enjoy, rather than one specific thing that someone's telling you is the best and, you know, the best thing for you.
I love hearing that. It's something I say all the time when I'm in airports. I try to take the stairs and not the escalators and the people movers and everything else. Every little bit count, folks. Go check out the book, The 1 Minute Workout. Also, go check out Dr. Ben Bowe. You can find him on Instagram under Ben Bowe. Ben, where else can they find you on the internet?
drbenbow.com. I mean, I have a web page which I've never seen, but, you know, and I have a book and I'm writing a second book. So just you go Dr. BENBO and you can Google it and there's all kinds of stuff apparently. I don't look myself up that often, but I'm told there's a lot of stuff on there.
You're even more Gran Torino than I am, which is not good, Ben. It is not good.
This is true.
Yeah, one day I'm going to figure out this damn internet. It won't be today. Now, guys, hang around because you need to stay on until this thing uploads and all that kind of crap. Folks,
No problem.
You know what to do. We all go shopping on Amazon. Before you go to Amazon, go to VinnieTortorich.com and click through the banner. Puts a little coal on the fire, gets our train down the track. I'm able to keep this show free for about, I think we're at 12 or 13 years now. Close to 2,600 shows. And they're all free. But the way we do it is you guys have to go spend money on Amazon, as we all do. My wife even buys toilet paper now from Amazon. We get toothpaste and everything else. Go through VinnieTortorich.com and help us out around here. That's the way we keep the lights on. Go check out Dr. Ben Bocchicchio. Dr. Ben Bowe, don't try to spell Bocchicchio because you will have a brain hemorrhage. Also, my new best friend, Dr. Maritn Gibala. Martin, I'm hoping this is not your last and only time on the show. Kind of like Ben, we would like to have you on from time to time. So on behalf of these esteemed gentlemen, my name is Vinnie Tortorich. Put life into living and do it with enthusiasm.